Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back to the PACE webinar series presented by Benchmark Portal. I'm Bruce Belfiore, CEO of Benchmark Portal, and these webinars are the fruit of our partnership with PACE that focuses on operational issues of importance to contact center managers. In fact, the topics were selected through a survey of PACE members and reflect the areas in which you said you wanted to see the results of research and best practices observations from our experts. We mix the research data plus practical boots on the ground advice, which we think will be of interest to you, our listeners. Before we start today's topic on how to manage your Generation Z employees, I'd like to introduce Chris Herrick, Senior Vice President of PACE, who has a couple of quick announcements. Chris?
Thanks, Bruce. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to give you a couple or a little bit of information about some upcoming PACE events that we have. The first one is the PACE 2019 Washington Summit. It's going to take place September 22nd through the 24th at the Intercontinental on the Wharf in Washington, D.C. This event will provide you with direct access to policymakers affecting our industry, as well as providing a better understanding of legislative issues and trends in the contact center. We're actually honored to have Nelson Mandela's grandson, Zondwe Mandela, who will be our keynote speaker. He's the founding director of the Mandela Legacy Foundation and will be speaking at 9:30 on Monday, September 23rd. You can find all the details about the summit by visiting our website, which is paceassociation.org. One of the things that I neglected to get on the slide is our New York Metro event that we're having. The PACE New York Metro chapter is going to be hosting their 2019 Technology and Expo Forum. They'll have industry leaders from Cisco Systems, Uber, Verizon, Verint, Salesforce, and others that will talk about on how to future ready your customer engagement center. The day-long event is going to take place September 12th at Cisco Systems in New York City. And you can find out more information or register at paceassociation.org. We will be having another regional event in Princeton, New Jersey on November 14th. And as things are solidified, we will update that on our website. And we're also looking to do an event in October in Denver. That'll be a regional contact center summit as well. And finally, Bruce has listed there so great as you're making your budgets. I know everybody is going into budget planning season here pretty quick. But PACE ACX 20, which is our annual convention and expo, will take place April 5th through the 8th at the Omni Amelia Island Resort and Spa. So be looking for more information on that and definitely make plans to attend any or all those events. Thanks, Bruce, for letting me chime in here. I appreciate it.
Not at all, Chris. Thanks very much. And they all sound like a lot of fun, particularly the Florida one. So looking forward to that. And finally, would like to remind you that the PACE Benchmark Portal partnership also is focused on making sure that you get good opportunities in terms of courses. We have these operational training courses that are available for all levels of contact center professionals, including the ones that are shown here. And as you can see, the discounts that are available to PACE members, and currently PACE members can get the first on-demand license free by contacting PACE directly. A great opportunity for those PACE members who would like to learn more without having to travel. So we encourage you to take advantage of this benefit of your PACE membership. So, okay, let's jump right into the topic of the day, which is Generation Zoom, how to succeed with your new Generation Z employees. And part of this is making managerial sense of the multi-generational contact center. So we're going to try to take this Gen Z puzzle and put it in the context of a bigger puzzle, which is how to really manage well your multi-generational contact center, which most people do have. So I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues, Dee Buell and Debbie Frazier, both of them veterans of MetLife contact center operations, and both of them with lots of best practices experience in setting up and executing contact center programs, both for in-house operations and for overseeing outsourced operations. They have a wealth of experience in managing employees of all generations, and we're lucky to have them here with us. Welcome, Dee and Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay, great. And before you start in, Debbie will be the first one to talk. I want to invite our listeners to send in questions by using the Q&A box below, and we will try to answer those questions at the end of the webinar. So now over to Debbie.
Thanks, Bruce. Good afternoon, or I guess morning to some of you. So multi-generational contact centers. Most contact centers, as you know, are multi-generational. They actually have been for several years now, but it's about to be a little bit more challenging. So first of all, let's take a look at what generation actually means, which you can see on the screen. So other names for it are going to be cohort or age group. And in general, a generation is a group of people who are about the same age and have experienced most often as children or young adults specific historical events, such as an economic crisis, an economic boom, war, or significant political changes. And obviously those events are going to influence how they actually view the world. So as managers, you really need to be open-minded to the opportunity to transform your workplace. So as you face all of these multi-generational centers, make sure you're going to take a deep breath and step back. Don't take it personally. And it's kind of like a game of HR with chess. You need to always think ahead 3 moves. So for the first time in history, there's going to be 4 generations in the labor market. So members of the Gen Z are those born from around 1996 onward, and they're just now beginning to enter the workforce, but will soon have an absolutely major role in companies all over the world. So let's give some thought to the questions below. Does Gen Z really have a realistic expectation of what the workplace will be like? Are there any security issues related to Gen Z companies should keep in mind? Does Gen Z want to work from home, much like the millennials do right now? And if I give them too much flexibility, how will I know they'll be good hires? So really, what applications will Gen Z bring to the workplace that companies can really learn from? And what challenges exist for older generations working with Gen Z? And how should managers actually approach these challenges? So there are many, many more questions about integrating this generation into the workforce, which we'll touch on a little bit later in the presentation. Before we actually take on the Gen Z, a couple of things that we want to take a look at. There are some actual generational splits. Dates, as I mentioned before, don't really matter as much as life experiences. It's more about the culture changes at this point. So in looking at this graph, you can look at just 2 of the common life characteristics at the bottom of your screen around education and values. And you can see a pretty dramatic shift from one generation to another as you look at those below. So using some generational dates along with age-related employment data from the Census Bureau, we get a demographic picture of what today's workforce might look like. Around 12% are baby boomers, 45% are Generation X, 41% are millennials, and only 1% are the silent generation, which is actually just before the baby boomers, and 1% are under 22 years of age, which is Gen Z. So let's take a little bit closer look around each of these generations. So as you can see here, we have the silent generation from 1930 to 1946, and the baby boomers from 46 to 1964. And the silent generation, that's obviously most of our senior employees. Skill development happened on the job for these employees. Seniority was really their key to how people were promoted, and they worked hard to make sure they had job security, and a lot of them just sticking with one position or company throughout their employment. Baby boomers, which keep in mind is about 12% of the workforce now, work was a major, major anchor in their lives. Success actually came to them by strong work ethics, face time, and skill. Their hesitancy to take off work sometimes created real issues between work and life imbalance. Then we have Gen X and millennials, which are often called Gen Y. So Generation X is from 1965 to 1984, millennials 85 to 1995. Gen X, because really they're children, obviously, of the baby boomers who were workaholics, they focus on a balance. They want to create that balance between work and family. They don't really worry about losing their place on the corporate team if they take time off. Work ethic is important, but not as much as skill is to them. So the more you know, the better chance of moving up with that generation. Millennials, as I said before, also referred to as Generation Y, are motivated by learning, and they want to see some immediate results. They want a good work-life balance, community involvement, and self-development is important to them as well. Flex time and job sharing and sabbaticals are also valued by this generation. They look really for meaningful careers with stability as well as innovation. So at this point, I will turn it over to Dee for some more information on Gen Z.
Thank you, Debbie. You know, while some of us may see this Generation Z as kind of challenging, managers that will embrace this generation are likely to experience a vibrant workforce. As you can see from here, we've got some of the characteristics listed, and many of them actually see work as a social setting. They're internet experts. The 9/11 event played a huge part in their youth, and while they didn't understand it, they knew it meant trouble. Between the 9/11 event and the Great Recession, Gen Zs learned to be resourceful. They have a strong desire to prove themselves. They're self-starters, but they do resist being pushed by leadership. They expect to influence the terms and the expectations of their job, or they may even start their own business at a very young age. But one thing that is very evident with them is they value quality. They look at reviews before they purchase products and before they go to a restaurant or even go to some type of a attraction, whether it be a concert, an amusement park, whatever. They really want to see what other people are saying before they buy into it. But they also accept the differences of people and generations as the norm. They are considered tech savvy. If you'll notice, they're always online, and they may look for answers using different websites than those approved by your company when they're employed by you. But they do multitask with no issue, and they can actually move from site to site with the speed of lightning. They're likely to do their jobs very well, but they're probably going to do it different than what other generations do. Their personal habits don't always match the expectations of a contact center. And I'm talking about things like no cell phones on the floor or being accountable for strict schedules. They have a tendency not to adhere to those schedules on a regular basis. They would rather message than talk to somebody in person. But there are a few benefits of that. They do develop good typing skills, and they can edit their messages before sending them. And then the critical thinking skills. Bruce has got some things to share about that.
Yes, Dee, actually, on this last bullet point, it's something that the three of us have talked about, and I think the jury is still out. We see some of this generation who are true, independent, critical thinkers because of some of the qualities that you talked about, and others who are not. In school and online, many of them have been channeled to challenge, is the way I put it, channeled to challenge. They've been channeled to challenge on issues of history, social justice, on views of business, economics, respect for experience, and attitudes toward hierarchy. What we don't know yet is if this channeling has led them toward truly independent, creative thinking, or rather toward a way of viewing the world which is different from past generations to a certain extent, but has its own rigid orthodoxy. And for managers, this could be a real challenge. Some do not take coaching the same way older generations do. So you need to have your antennae up as you recruit, vet, and interview members of this generation. And remember, this is a generation that, let's face it, is really wedded to its smartphones and dependent on technology like none before it. And before we get too serious about them, let's take a lighthearted look at a lighthearted video with its own take on this challenge. Watch how the Gen Z person at the beginning of this video is making more eye contact with her handheld than with the interviewer. I think you're going to enjoy this.
Amy, it says you are trained in technology. That's very good. Are you adept at Excel?
No.
PowerPoint?
No.
Publisher?
Not really.
Exactly in what area of technology are you proficient?
Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram, Vine, Twitter. You know, the big ones.
I'm surprised you didn't say Facebook.
That's for old people, like my parents. That's funny.
Well, Amy, when you're working for me, you have to have those kind of research skills because I'll send you things for you to comb through and get the answers and send them to me. So for that, you got to be really good at technology.
For stuff like that, no problem. I'll just ask Siri.
You'll just ask Siri?
You know, Siri tell me this, Siri find me that. We're all good at getting you the answers.
Tell Siri I want you ready to go at 8 sharp each and every morning.
I don't understand.
What don't you understand?
What you just said.
You don't understand be ready to go?
No. You said 8, right?
Yes.
8 like in the morning 8?
Yes, in the morning.
Yeah. That kind of doesn't work for me. Who gets up at 8?
I do.
I Skype with my French boyfriend in Paris until like 3 in the morning. I don't even get to Starbucks until like 10, where I order my grande chai tea latte, 3 pumps, skim milk, light water, 2% foam, extra hot, but not too hot. So if it's okay, I work best in the morning at 10:45.
Wow. Amy, I don't think we're going to be a good fit.
Why are you so negative? I can sense your hostilities, and right now I am not feeling very safe. I've been here for over 5 minutes, and the only nice thing you have said to me was nice resume, which I typed all night for this meeting with you. You've given me no guidance, no validation, no encouragement, no supervision. Is there an HR director somewhere?
HR director?
Yes, I need to speak to someone. I may have to take off today as a mental health day.
Take the day off. Amy, look at me. You don't work here.
Are you firing me?
Okay, yes.
I love this every time I look at it. What a kick, huh? 8 in the morning. Do some of the things in there make the listeners feel old? Certainly makes me feel old. Naturally, there's some comic exaggeration here, but there's a lot of truth too to Dee's point about people, being tied to their cell phones and all that sort of thing. I mean, I recall being in our family SUV with my son, who is a first-year member of the Gen Z cohort, born in 1996. So this is personal for me. The car was packed with scouts, and we were on our way to an outing, and there was dead silence in the car. And I looked over, and my son, who was riding shotgun, was doing something with his smartphone. So I said, "Hey, Will, you have all of your friends here in the car together. Why don't you communicate with them?" And he looked up at me and said, "I am." At which point I said, "Hey, champ, how about you put that thing down, turn around, and talk to people rather than text?" So, it's a different way of communicating. It's a different way of seeing the world. And it's one that we have to get used to and be able to deal with, while at the same time being able to deal with the needs of our center. So, a big concern for many managers came through in the video. Some of these folks are, to say the least, not always understanding of the work world as we understand it. So we need to take a deep breath, think for a minute about what is important in the contact center and what we are required as managers to fulfill and deliver. People have to show up. There has to be good attendance. They need to be on time. They need to adhere to the schedule. Lots of times, in fact, we find that managers are not good at conveying the importance of adherence and why it's important. And here, you need to get good at explaining to people why their non-adherence has an impact on their colleagues, on the customers, and on the company. They need to be well trained. And actually, this is where the critical thinking component comes in. And we're going to be watching closely to see how this develops. They need to represent your brand really well and embrace your mission. In fact, the embracing of the mission is really key to all the rest of the things. So, here are the requirements that we have as managers. And so in terms of making sure that they understand these things, from even before they get on the job, you have to make sure that they have a realistic preview of what the job is about. Be very frank and very open with them about what they're getting into, and make sure that they accept it. And we all know that sometimes people will say they accept it and then they actually get into it. But at least we need to give them a realistic job preview in terms of describing the job or showing them the job so that they know from their first day on the job what they're getting into. And, in training, reinforce the importance of attendance, schedules, human resource guidelines, all of these things. The new generation wants to be successful, but may need more guidance to get there. Be there for them, be a sounding board, be square, and be fair with them. Be sure that they understand, really, and we'll talk about that more in just a second. Make sure that if there are bright lines and zero tolerance points with regard to a whole range of things in terms of behavior in the call center and adherence to policies, that they know what those are and that it's very clear up on the board and they know about it. Also, don't forget about the power of promotions because they are people who are going to want to rise in the organization. And so making sure that those people who are promoted are the ones who have adhered to your regulations and shown critical thinking skills. Both are the ones who should, have the promotions in your organization. And similarly, if you are into gamification, make sure that that is tailored well to the agents in your center and to this generation. So be really clear, then walk the talk. Remember that you as mentors are really necessary. You're the ones who will relate to their characteristics, yet hold firm to the fundamental requirements for success for the center. Always be authentic. They will notice if you're not. And the last point here is the one that I mentioned, and that is that nothing is so clearly stated that it cannot be misunderstood. So we need to minimize the possibility for misunderstandings by reviewing your emails and other communications before launching. In fact, I recommend that you reread them 3 or 4 times through the lenses of different people in your center from different age cohorts, generational cohorts, to see how they, with their hooks and their emotional proclivities, will tend to, see and read what you write so that you can avoid the traps and you can, in fact, motivate people better by making sure that it's really clear and it's tailored, okay? This slide makes reference to a concept of mine that I've used before to help managers think about communicating with various generations. Now, think about the information Debbie and Dee gave you regarding different generations and how they've been formed by intense mutual experiences during their formative years. And think about the fact that when you're talking to different generations, you are, in a way, reaching across generational time zones. You're finding the right words, the right emotional hooks to really communicate with these different generations. And as a manager, you're responsible for managing all of the different generations well. You need to use a variety of techniques to build strong relationships with each employee. And not just look at them, by the way, as a type or as a generation, but as an individual, because individuals within generational groups are going to be different and are going to vary. So be sensitive to that as well. Every person is their own individual. And know the generational strength and preferences. It's a great place to start. Technology is an enabler and can be one of the key tools you use to cross those time zones. And don't hesitate to have, for instance, mini workshops and have the millennials and the Gen Z employees help to develop the curricula. They can share technical knowledge that helps make the job easier and may help your job and make it easier. And it will also make their personal lives more efficient too. So, examples like online search, shortcuts that they come up with could end up redounding to your benefit in a big way. Okay, with that, I'd like to pass things back over to Dee for some more practical tips to manage this generation.
Thank you, Bruce. Well, I want to talk a little bit actually about managing them. So you need to really get to know your employees. Don't assume you know their skills and their career aspirations. In a contact center space, we stress the importance of strong customer relationships. As a manager, you also need to have those strong agent relationships. And that way you are building a team of folks that will want to work together. They bring different perspectives. And, when you identify team projects, make sure you have agents from all generations participate in those. I actually have an example to share. I had been asked to reduce the training for new hires in my organization at one point. I thought I was doing a great job. I identified the most quality people that I had, the most tenured people I had. We went to work on it. And, after we had worked several meetings about this, we were able to reduce our training just a couple days. Well, about a year later, I went back in and redid it again. And this time, I reevaluated my choice of generational employees that I had on the team. I included the Gen Z folks, and they're much more technical savvy. They provided much easier and more efficient processes to get the job done. So we were able to reduce that 8 weeks training down to 6 weeks. So they contribute a great deal in us making our center much more efficient. And also during team meetings, encourage your employees to share personal interests. We all talk about the family environment that's in a contact center. Team building exercises are a great way to get to know one another and have some fun doing it. And the Gen Z really do like to make the job fun. There's a lot of benefit by assigning one-on-one mentors with the Gen Zs. And when you do have them sit next to someone that's tenured, make sure it's not just a one-on-one situation. A lot of on-the-job training occurs while doing the job. It's good to have a good mix of tenure and generation sit in the same general area. New hires will help the tenured agents handle challenging calls and learn from them. And then the Gen Zs can share their navigation and search skills with the less tech-savvy agents. Communication is always a challenge, but don't be caught up in your standard preference. Some communications is done by paper, email, and texting. Be sensitive to your word choices. Bruce just talked about rereading and rereading to make sure you're reaching every generation, but also be careful of your word choices, such as you must do this or you're not able to do that. That just kind of shuts down this generation. Use face-to-face communication more also. Right now, as we go through audits and so forth of different companies, team huddles are really big right now. And it gives much more effective sharing. There's a lot of questions and answers that can be done in a huddle so that everybody walks away understanding more about whatever you're communicating. And also include Gen Z employees in focus groups and encourage a broader discussion. This will help shape your environment to include all generations. And there's nothing better than manage by walking around. And when you walk the floor, all of your different employees from the generations will see that you are really one of them. They don't look to you as some superior. Although they need to respect you, it's important that they feel you're a part of their team. Now, Deb's going to share another communication challenge with you.
Well, I think as most of you already know, and definitely had some good examples in the video, the world of technology has definitely developed into their own translation of words, and Gen Zs actually use these words fluently. And also the slang may not always mean what you think. I've outlined a few examples of many here. One is cloud, obviously not just what we see in the sky any longer, but part of the internet that's allowing storage. Ping is not just a sound that it was previously used for, but also means contacting someone by sending a text message. Tag is definitely not just used as identifying a marker or a price on something, but it now links to someone's profile on social media. Tweet, which used to be just a chirping bird, is now a short message posted on Twitter. And bad, not always doing something wrong like it used to be. It means actually something good or great. And right along with bad is sick, which used to mean, again, not feeling well, but a good thing. Something amazing is what it means now. And we also have a few acronyms that I'm sure many of you have seen before and possibly even use these. I won't go through all of them, just pinpoint a few. The first one, I think, the too fast for you is fairly common. When we get a little bit further down, such as AAMOF, not sure I would have known that one originally. The BC because is similar, and then there are actually a lot of letters down here that really are easier than actually typing out the word. So just keep all of that in mind as well, and remember that words or acronyms don't always mean the same thing that they possibly used to mean. And with that, I will turn it back over to Bruce.
Thanks very much, Deb and Dee, for those thoughts. And I was just thinking another one that I hear now with the Gen Z folks is sweet. Sweet doesn't necessarily mean sweet. It means that something's good. So anyway, another one of those new words, if you will. So Gen Z's added perspectives are important to us, but you know, they are actually quite self-sufficient. And as managers, as Dee indicated, we need to know how to optimize their ambitions to create the environment that you want to create and to get the results that you want to create. In other words, to leverage their strong points so that you can, in fact, make your center better and better. Managing multi-generations can be a major challenge if you attempt to use just traditional management styles. So you're going to have to look inside yourself, not just understand the others in your center and these new Gen Z people, but understand yourself and how you react. And as was said earlier, not take it personally, but develop yourself as a manager in a way that you can communicate better with and do a good job as a manager with the Gen Zers coming in. As with any process, new ideas and ways of thinking can be key to becoming great. So understand the language that Deb was talking about and the emotional hooks, and embrace the challenge here. Managers who are open-minded and embrace the opportunity can maintain the strong contact centers that you need in order to fulfill your goal to capture all generations of employees and customers. So the old ways won't necessarily open new doors. You need to look at yourself as well as this new generation to figure out how you can do things better and how you can succeed together, because that's really what it's all about. Okay, so now we'll go to questions. Before we do, I just remind you that the courses are available to you, including the Coaching for Performance course. And that's a course that will, in fact, help you and your supervisor staff engage all of your employees of all generations. So just something to keep in mind there. So with questions, let's see, we have three that kind of line up. It's with regard to recruiting, training, and coaching. So how about if we start with the recruiting side, because that would be the logical order. So, you know, in terms of recruiting and screening these folks, I think by thinking about the video that we saw, you can probably pick up a number of clues that you should have your antennae up for, and make sure that you don't let certain people through the net. We should not be just trying to get butts in seats. We're trying to get the right people in our center so that the center can excel and be a really excellent center. So things to think about. Resumes are oftentimes the first way that people send in representation of themselves. So you want to make sure that your job description that goes out into the marketplace is one that's going to be attractive to the right kind of Gen Z person or millennial person that you want to bring in. So read that with the lenses that we've tried to give you in this webinar. Make sure you've got a really good job description or request for labor out there. The resume, again, look at it in terms of form and substance. The form for some of the folks in Gen Z is really all over the place. They don't necessarily adhere to the standards of the past, and that can tell you something. You're not necessarily going to be dispositive, but it's something that you're going to want to take a look at. Check out their academic record. If they've been in sports, they tend to be more team type people. Scouting, volunteer work, all of those things can help you to get inside of the Gen Z type of people. Now, unlike members of the Boomer generation or the Gen X generation, who tended to get into volunteer work really out of the goodness of their hearts and because there might have been a family tradition to doing that or something like that, the younger generation is oftentimes channeled into that through their schools. And so, you want to make sure that the activities that they're putting down are really true activities, sincere activities, and not just things that they had to do to check something off on their school requirements or for getting into college. You should take into account disadvantaged backgrounds and immigrant status, and you will also find that in certain cases, people who come from those backgrounds can be extremely good employees who don't have some of the characteristics of more affluent people who might be, trying for the job. Telephone interviews, listen for the right kind of representation. The person who's going to represent you well in a telephone interview, which should always precede an in-person interview, by the way, just to make sure that you're being, you're using your time well. There's skills screening with regard to typing, math, apps, things that are important to you. Use those in these cases. The in-person interview can be very telling. And if you need to, in fact, give your interviewing staff some tips on all of these things, please do ahead of time before the hiring season starts so that they have their eyes open to things that they should be looking for. And finally, remember, each person is an individual, and each part of the country, actually, most of our listeners are in North America, although they actually are around the world. And, each country will be different. There'll be different levels of experience, politeness, etc., in different places. So keep those things in mind. With that, I think I'll stop and then go on to the next question, which comes from Amy, and which is, when employing people from multiple generations, how do we train so it's meaningful for everyone? Great question. Let's see, how about if we ask Dee to answer that one, or Debbie?
Yeah, this is Debbie. I can take that one. The main thing, just as we do really with any training group, we need to make sure we're taking into consideration that all of them are going to learn a little bit differently. So it's best to really have a variety of training materials, whether it be audio, visual, interactive activities in the training program. Just, I guess, kind of as an example, baby boomers always liked printed material. However, they're not usually opposed to using technology as well when asked to do so. Gen X is more likely to value interactions when it comes to training, but they also like to be self-paced a lot of times. Millennials, they're multimedia learners, and they really need to be able to access all of their training online. And really Gen Z that's just coming up and getting started, they really only know probably the digital world, so they can consume a lot of information, however, in short periods of time. So really just taking a look at all of these different generations before you actually start the training or even get materials ready, know who your audience is going to be, and know that you're going to have to tailor that according to the variety that you may have out there. And the biggest thing, like I said, is considering that they all, in fact, learn differently.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. Great insights. The next is on coaching. And so the question is, could you give us some suggestions with regard to coaching members of Gen Z?
Okay, I'll take that one, Bruce. One of the things that it's easy for us to think Gen Z is very, very different, but they really are just more focused on some of the things that we do on a regular basis. It's really good to catch them doing things right. They love to be praised and feel special. But I don't think that's different from any generation. It's just that they really are motivated by those things. And, when they do mess up, help them understand how to correct it. Let them correct it themselves. They love to learn. That's one of the attributes of the Gen Zs. They're always interested in learning and being self-sufficient. Another thing would be to create an environment for them to learn and excel. And as Deb was just talking about the training, one of the things I was thinking about is, they do like to take things in smaller chunks. That's good for anybody. I remember when I went to training, and believe it or not, I was a call center representative at one time. And when you gave me a whole manual to read, it was much more difficult to read, comprehend, and then apply what I was learning. But if I did different little chunks, it made a difference. And then I guess too, make sure you give them the opportunity to contribute. I think one of the earlier conversations we had was, make sure that they feel valued by the team. So having them actually create modules to show how to navigate screens and share it in a team meeting, those sorts of things, it gives them the opportunity to contribute to the team, but also to be recognized as a valuable part of the team. And then I think lastly, I would say be direct with them. They really do want to contribute, but they also have to be held accountable. They enjoy team aspects. They love to game, whether it may not be in person so much, but they play games on their phones all day long probably. But make sure that they understand to be a part of the team, they have to be there. It's kind of like the old fish concept where, be there, be present, and really encourage that when you're coaching them, that they need to be present with those that are around them and to contribute not only to their teammates, but be there to represent your brand to the consumer. So I think if we look at all those points, we do that for everyone, but you may have to think about how you do it and really focus on it when you're coaching a Gen Z employee.
Great points, great points. I was reading a Wall Street Journal article that was more from the point of view of the Gen Z people who are coming out of college and going into the workforce right now. And one of the things that's happening to a lot of them is that they're being given an unprecedented level of responsibility and accountability in their jobs because of the booming economy. And the fact that they're going into these companies that are oftentimes resource strapped in terms of human resources. And so they are expected to come up to speed and to do things very quickly. Sometimes get onto a sales team, and the next day they're making a sales presentation. Obviously, this is not going to happen in every case, but apparently, according to this article, they were giving tips to the Gen Z folks for rising to the challenge. And apparently they're doing that. So that's a very good indication that it's a capable cohort that's coming through. and that they may be, able to take on more than you expect. You just need to challenge them the right way, with the right motivation, perhaps through gamification, and with a great attitude on your part. So those are great questions, by the way. Thank you very much. And let me just ask before we close, Debbie and Dee, if you have any final thoughts for our listeners before we close out the webinar.
Just really that it's kind of an exciting time, and really in any aspect of whether it be a contact center or really anywhere else, it's something that we always need to give some thought to, of how different groups of generations really do view things differently.
Yep, and I'd add to that, keep in mind that you need to make sure that the folks that are in your center already have the right training, so that they can be, prepared to do what they need to with the younger generation as well. So make sure that you yourself get the right training, and that your supervisors get the right training, and that they really are prepared to do a good job in this very fast changing world that we're living in. Dee, do you have any final thoughts?
I do, but I also see that we have a question from Cheryl about suggestions on how to engage Gen Z in the work from home environment. So I'm going to answer her question first.
Great.
I think one of the key things there is, we've kind of talked about it throughout the whole presentation, is making them feel valuable. As I mentioned earlier, they love to be praised. They love to be a part of the team. So I would definitely encourage you to keep them as motivated towards a team goal as possible. I actually had a group of individuals that were all work-at-home agents, and I had a manager that was very good at that. And like when we would have food days in the office, he would send them cards to go to, whether it be a Chick-fil-A or a Arby's, or, get a pizza, something of that nature. Or he would just have a pizza delivered to them at home to make sure that they knew they were part of what was going on in the office. The other thing too is when you have your team meetings, do them with Skype if you can, so they get to see each other. There's something about looking at the team and understanding, who's who. Another thing that I know is very important with the work at home environment is that you give special time to them. Every day when you come in, make sure you communicate with them, whether it be through a same time, some kind of a technology that you're using. Say hello to them, just like you would if they were in the office and you were just walking down through the cubes. Make sure that they know you're there to support them. And, I think the biggest thing that we need to understand with Gen Z is that they are really just eager to get into the workforce. They need to be accountable. They want to be promoted. And it's really kind of back on us as managers to be creative on how we get them there. And I guess then for my own final thoughts about this, I go back to what we were saying at the very beginning. Embrace this generation. I have a lot of family members that are in this generation. And if I have something that I can't understand technology-wise, I get them over here. They will help me with my computer. They'll do different things. And they feel really special then. So if you recognize the things that they do right, and you make them feel special, and you have a warm environment for them, I have no doubt that the contact center is actually going to become more efficient than it has been in the past as a result of their skills.
Okay, great. Well, that, really puts things into context. There's challenges here, but there's fabulous opportunities. And those opportunities are business opportunities as well as very human opportunities to develop ourselves, to develop our mentorship skills, and to develop these other people, these young people, through what we do and how we do it. So thank you very, very much, Dee Buell and Deb Frazier. Thank you very much for your insights here. And thank you to Pace for hosting this, as well as to Alan Potcotter, our producer. And we thank as well all of our listeners. So with that, we will close the webinar and wish everyone a wonderful day.